enjoying the slightly longer weekend than normal.
This is what I love about Sweden because for some reason I have been on a bank holiday since lunchtime on Wednesday. Even though Thursday was the bank holiday, I got a half a day off for Wednesday because
Mhm.
I don't even know what that's called. And then because there was a squeeze day in between, they just give us the
Yeah,
2.5 days off.
yeah.
So, so I made full use of it, I can tell you.
hmm Very good. Yeah, me
So,
too.
so tell me what you're working on these days.
Yeah. Well, I mean, job-wise, I'm involved in nanotechnology, and I work in a biotech company. I'm CTO. So I work in a company called Nanologica, and we make nanoporous silica for drug delivery and for chromatography. So we basically manufacture in our labs in Södertälje, and we are involved in this material that is used both for purifying medicines but also for delivery, so-called drug delivery systems. So it's pretty exciting. I mean, it's basically cutting edge nanotechnology, and especially with the current COVID-19, and we're right at the thick of it, and hopefully feeling we're making a difference.
So what? How will the product that you're developing? How will it help in this sort of fight against the COVID-19?
Yeah. So I mean, basically we've got two business areas. One is the purification and production of medicines, so sort of very early stage. And then the second is the more delicate and complex formulation of drugs for applications. So we are working on a platform to improve delivery for direct delivery into lungs, so pulmonary delivery, or yeah, basically lung delivery.
Wow.
And yeah, so we're looking into actually the application on the drugs that are in the news at the moment, whether or not they can be formulated. Alternatively, looking at drugs that are secondary to the disease, so the diseases that people are suffering that may cause complications or even death.
Yeah.
So it's yeah. So I mean, we are still early stage. We're preclinical, but we're planning to go to clinical trials early next year. So
That's amazing. So when
mm,
you say that you're helping to sort of purify it, what do you
mm,
do with the medicine that exists? Like, what is from a layman's term perspective? What are you doing, if it's possible to even describe it
right.
in such a way?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it is. I mean, our product is going into end stage, so-called purification or final polishing for biologics. So insulin and a lot of the drugs that are used for diabetic patients, our product is used in the final purification to remove impurities, to basically make sure that there's no contamination in the final products. So these are products that are grown and manufactured at large scale, and they're naturally occurring, or protein or peptide drugs. And so the final stage is purification, and that's where our product comes in. So you pass the drug through a bed made of these particles, and the impurities are left behind.
It sounds like this is a company that we should be investing in because this
Well,
is so
yes, I mean,
current. This is so current.
well, it is, and we are getting. It's that fine. I mean, now is the time of reckoning, actually, and biotechs are getting full focus, which is good. And people are. I mean, we are on the small stock exchange in Stockholm, and we've got a solid investor base. We've been public since 2015, but the current times has really put companies like ours in focus, and we have an important role to play because we are innovative and we are fast moving, and we're going to be able to help supply solutions to big pharma to actually speed things up. So the race is on, as you know, to develop both vaccines and drugs, and companies like ours are ones that help offer the drug delivery systems that actually make this possible.
That's phenomenal.
So yeah, I mean, it does. It's. I mean, you can imagine it's been a lot of hard work in the last few months, more than normal. A lot of pressure, but we're very serious, and we believe that we can make a big difference.
Yeah, it's a great time for a lot of people who have been doing a lot of they've been planting a lot of seeds. It's time for those people to sort of reap what they have sowed over the past few years, because there was many businesses and even sections of business which were not getting the credit they deserved, but the people were working
Mm,
away tirelessly behind the scenes on
mm,
technology which wasn't deemed to be sexy or cool or anything like that. And at the same time, governments were bailing out, or like airlines and these others, banks and these other sectors which are ultimately doomed. But the people
right.
who have taken a chance to work on products which would be more beneficial for the future, like yourselves, have now
Mm,
got
mm.
yourselves to a stage where a small glimmer of light has appeared above the horizon, and you're getting to a stage where you're actually creating real world solutions for people who really need these. And this virus has changed the entire landscape for business. So I commend you on
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, that's right. I mean, it's basically, I mean, it's sort of sped things up. It's put the value of innovative small companies in focus, and it has given us a chance to sort of excel. But I mean, it's been good. It's lowered the sort of barriers to entry in the discussion. On the other hand, it still does take a long time. There needs to be due diligence. There needs to be, the still the safety aspect needs to be taken into account. So things do take a long time, but and also, I mean, what's quite fun and nice for us is that our role is sort of being taken into account, and people are respecting that. I
Yeah.
mean, both. I mean, it is. I mean, it's time for different celebrities. I mean, being a celebrity just for the sake of it was sort of what everyone were looking to a few years ago, and now, I mean, people are actually appreciating the nurses and the doctors, and also, I think there's been a little realization that some things are quite difficult and are quite complex, and you can't just solve it, by I don't know, having a pretty face or
Yeah.
something on the media. It does actually take a lot of hard work and dedication and education, and there's also teamwork. So it's yeah, it definitely is still a long road, but I think there's been a little bit of appreciation from people who didn't know these sort of things took place in the
Yeah.
background, and now it's come to the front.
It's great. What do you think
Mm,
about the state of people across Europe coming out on a Thursday night or whatever to clap for nurses? What's your sort of
exactly. Yeah.
what's your thoughts on that?
I think it's great. I think it's really good. I mean, yeah. I mean, it is a recognition that people are selflessly working on our behalf in the healthcare system, and they haven't been given due credit in the past. It's just been accepted that whatever problem you've got, you go to hospital, someone will be there, night or day, whatever the hour, and you'll be treated. And I
Yeah.
think this is a good thing.
I do as well.
So yeah, I like it.
I've always tried to give a lot of support to people who work in the services industry, and especially
Mm,
like people who work in nursing, people who work like helping dentists, people and air hostesses who work on planes all day and all night. These
mm,
types of
mm.
where the people give you so much, and because they do it at such a good level that you almost take it for
Yeah,
granted. And
sure.
not that we do take it for granted. And the fact is, these
Yeah.
people, the salaries they get and the respect that they were
Mm,
getting in society,
mm.
is nowhere near what it should be. And my
No.
this there's I had to actually do have a bit of a I'm not really completely on board with this clapping for nurses, because when I look at America and I see how they sort of have this sort of perverse approach to how they sort of salute their military and the guys, the veterans.
Right.
Yet
Right.
at the same
Mm,
time,
mm.
a lot of these guys who are homeless on the streets are ex-veterans. A lot of the guys are not getting taken care of. They lose their pensions, and it's great to get these people to come into these jobs and clap for them, but it doesn't help
Mm.
them actually. And so
Right.
I'm afraid that it's going to become a bit perverse across Europe, that we're, but sure, you're a nurse and we clap for you every Thursday night. Yeah, but she still can't pay
Right.
her bills, and she still has to pay €50 a week just to park your car in the hospital. You know, all these weird. So I'm all for these people getting the credit they deserve. I would much rather see them getting paid and respected, in a way which is actually tangible, and it helps them get better lives, and helps a higher standard of person as well get attracted to those professions, to the extent that they can actually end up, you know, it becomes more competitive, as opposed to people just going there because whatever reason, you know. So I'm a bit afraid of that, actually, that we're going to, this is the government's get out of jail clause by making us clap for them when they could actually be paying them more money.
Yeah, well, sure. I do agree. I mean, I have a similar sentiment, but I mean, it is a gesture, and I think that it's sort of in a way, as a public offering that these people deserve credit. And I mean, the same as with school teachers as well. I mean, you know, we take them for granted, drop kids off, they're, you know, looked after all day long, and very rarely thanked or really taken, you know, appreciated.
That's a difficult job, being a school teacher in the modern world, because the rules and regulations placed against the teachers just to do the basics of their job, and also the amount of blame that they get for sort of from parents who are not doing their job. They blame the teachers for everything. So I've said this for years. If I was made president or prime minister tomorrow, the very, very first thing that I would do is that I would say, from next year, all teachers are going to get the equivalent of €100,000 each per annum. That's the salary. And I want the best people now to compete and learn for these jobs as being teachers, because the teachers are directly responsible for the future of every nation, because they have a direct influence on the minds that are coming through the society, and you know, and how open their minds can be, and how caring and considerate and all that. I would just go six figures straight away, nurses, teachers, and just say, right, you're looking after our elderly and our young, and we need to have the best of people in there, and those roles should be rewarded accordingly.
Recognized, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, no, similar sentiments. Yeah, absolutely.
So, how has this? What me and you have in common, we have a few things in common, despite you being an absolute legend and blowing my mind every time we meet. I like to claim the few things we have in common. We both met our wives in Australia.
That's right. Yes.
We both headed off from our small islands and ended up in Australia, met some nice girls, and both got captured and brought back by these Viking ladies to Sweden.
Exactly.
So, but you've been here 20 years.
That's right. I know. I mean, it's amazing. Time has flown by. Yeah. So when I did my PhD in Australia, in Adelaide, and as you say, I met a Swede, and I said to her that I'd got a very good offer to do a postdoc, and she was desperate to hear where it was. I had an offer in Boston, discussion to go to Germany, even to Brazil, and I came home and I told her Sweden, and her face dropped, and she said, "Why do we want to go to Sweden?" And I said, "Well, it's your country, you know. I'd like to learn to know the place where you come from." And I said, "Don't worry, it's a 2-year postdoc max, and then after that we'll do something different." And that was 20 years ago. So yeah, it's amazing. I mean, the time has flown by. I mean, I've now got 2 kids, and I've pretty much settled, but moved on, done different jobs, moved from academia into industry, but yeah, it's amazing. But there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of good things, of course, and in Sweden, and it's very attractive, and a lot of still. I mean, it still attracts other people outside. So it's vibrant, but yeah, I wouldn't have thought it'd be 20 years that we were.
Yeah, it is. It actually is quite a vibrant society, and it's quite a competitive society as well, which is what I like. Because to do well in Sweden, you need to be good. Because whenever the Swedes do something well, they do it at such a world-class level. And for you to compete with that, because the Swedes are they look across the world for who they should compete with, whether that's in ice hockey, table tennis, technology, or building cars and jet planes. They want to be the best at that, in that niche. And I do find that by living in Stockholm, I'm up against a more driven and more competitive individual and more competitive society than I would get if I was living in Dublin or Ireland, because there's
Hmm.
a real sense of there is that socialist sort of facade that's there, but I think
Hmm.
whenever the
Hmm.
people pop their head up from that, they
Yeah.
really want to go to the top, and they really there's a real sense of belief in the society that they can achieve it as well.
Hmm. Yeah, sure. And I mean, we talked a little bit about this together once in a while. I mean, I think that, I mean, of course, there's a very solid base. I mean, the society in Sweden just sets you up so that everyone has got a good general standard of living, and I think that sets you, in good stead. And then within a framework, most people are generally doing well. They are achieving good things. But the ones that you meet who are sort of at the top of their game, I mean, they're world class, because there is that element that it's a small pool, and you've got to really work hard and really commit. And those people are world leaders. So it is an interesting situation to be here in a capital city, and we can bump into a handful of people through friends of friends that are leading in their special areas. So yeah, I agree. It is a vibrant
Yeah,
vibrant place to
that's a
be.
good point actually, because I know so many people, even like yourself, who are just they're leading the world in the thing that they do, and we're probably 1 degree of separation away from every one of those people, and we can meet them quite easily tomorrow just by
Mm,
saying, "Can you
mm,
introduce me to this guy or that girl or whoever?" And
mm.
and it works out. And this is a question I have for you. So you have 2 kids now, and they're both teenagers. How do you see the
Yeah,
upbringing you've had in like a sort of more of a quiet sort of sort of English countryside upbringing compared to the
right.
upbringing that they have, like the schooling and all? What do you think's better, or is it just equally good in different ways?
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up in Cornwall, in Penzance, and it was and then I went to actually a very small school. There were 6 boys and 6 girls in up until year six. Um, and it was a country school, but I was inspired by one or two good teachers, and it's thanks to them that I got my education, and then I went on and continued up to higher education.
I'm recording this podcast through Anchor, and if you're considering doing a podcast and you haven't heard about Anchor, then let me tell you, it's the easiest way to do a podcast. So let me explain. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute the podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many other platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, and it's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. Definitely check it out. Download the app now from the store.
I think, again, getting back to the theme of sort of Sweden being a good solid base, I think here they're very much looking at making sure that everyone get to a level standard. So the schooling in general, I think, is good here. I think there needs to be attention for really gifted kids to give them the attention they need. There's a lot of support for making sure everyone gets up to a level, and that's a good thing. And that really is, what Sweden still is good at. But I think that there isn't necessarily an emphasis to push talent at a young age and say that it's okay to to be good and to do well. But I mean, I'm happy with the education that they're getting. They are going to a local school. I mean, I do find, and I have needed myself to help them and get involved, and we do work after school on their science, their maths, and their English. So I'd say that it's at a good level, but it's sort of, if you do well, you get out what you put in here, and I think that but it's a relaxed atmosphere in general, and I don't think they enjoy it just because it's a lot is put on social interaction as well as the grades, of
Is it
course.
really? Yeah. I didn't.
Well, in my
I
yeah,
didn't realize
what
that
I've seen,
because the Swedes wouldn't be. They wouldn't be globally known as being the most sociable people. You
no,
know. But they don't come
exactly,
across as such. I believe that I get into a discussion at least once a week where someone's telling me that Swedish people are this or that or the other, and I'm always like,
mm,
I say Swedes are absolutely. I love them. They're completely. I love them. So I love living here. I love their approach to life, and I just really appreciate the society that I live on. So I'm like the biggest defender or promoter of both Sweden and the Swedes in a weird way. And I'm
yeah,
always saying to
right,
people, if you stand at T-Centralen, like the central station, with a map at the top of the escalator, the next 1,000 people to come up will actually just go straight past you, and none will stop and ask you, do you need help or directions? But the next person that comes up, if you stop them and say, excuse me, can you tell me where this place is? They will be so
mm,
helpful. Like they'll be so happy to help you.
right,
And I'm always saying, like,
and walk you
that's how they
down.
are. They will literally take you there. And
Mm,
they're very helpful, but they're so non-intrusive. Like they're probably, I don't know how they
right,
think. They're probably thinking that guy loves maps. He just stands there looking at maps all day, or leave him alone. Let him do his thing. But they're actually
right,
really,
right.
I find them to be super helpful and kind and generous, both with their
Mm,
time and their resources. And I really do have to feel as an immigrant in this society that it's up. Sometimes I have to stick up for them and sort of say to people, if you're having a tough time in this society, you need to look in the mirror. It's the society is not the problem, and also we all choose to move here for various reasons.
right.
And
Mm,
the problem that you're facing if you're in a society and you're not getting on, the problem and the solution is both in the mirror. Have a look at yourself and see what you can do to contribute to that society in a more sort of productive and positive way, and you'll be surprised at the response you get in that regard as well.
mm, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so that's how I see it, I think I'll stick around here for quite a while. Actually, I didn't think when I came here 5 years ago, I didn't know if I was just coming off backpacking for 7 years, and I thought, yeah, I've been offered a
Right.
job. We'll see how a year goes, or maybe 2 years. And the longer I'm here,
Yeah.
the more I feel like sticking it out. I sort of
Yeah.
bed myself in deeper,
Well, it'll be 20 years before you know it.
and bring it on. I'm not afraid of that at all.
Right.
So
So is it 5 years you've been here now?
5 years. I came
Yeah.
here January 15, and I had just come off backpacking, and I was here for Christmas. And the guy reached out to me and says he'd been following me on social media and can he meet me for fika? And I was, of course, the guy who will always say yes to someone offering me a cup of tea. So I came down and they
Yeah.
told me they were building a startup with Microsoft and would I like to get involved? And I had just got married and I had been on the
Mm,
road for 7 years. So I said,
right.
yeah. So I said to my new wife, do you want to move to Sweden? And she says, absolutely no way. I don't want to move back. I've left, and I'm happy enough
Yeah.
living in Dublin doing
Same.
my
Same.
education. And she really appreciates the English speaking
Right.
world. She likes the sort of the banter. And
Yeah.
so I moved, and she didn't move over for like 3 more months, and she probably thought that I'd be sick of it after 3 months. But then I was like, no, I like it. I like the people. I like the work practices, and I like the honesty of it. So we've
Yeah.
both been here now, and I think she struggled, for the first few years, more than
Right.
I think now when I look back, I think she struggled more than I could believe. But now I think she's more settling back into things as her and her friends, and all become more settled as people as well.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, in a way, I mean, well, I definitely understand. I mean, if you leave then and you're sort of mentally left, it is hard to come back and then start a life again here in a place that's so familiar, and yet it will have changed a lot.
Yeah.
So,
What about the UK and England in general? Does it have any pull to you now, or what's happening over there for you?
well, I mean, I got my citizenship, my Swedish citizenship, when Brexit was happening. So I'm very happy to have that now. I mean, yeah, I was a great supporter of Europe, and I'm very disappointed on the way it turned out with Brexit. I think that there's a lot that's going to be lost, and just the general attitude of sort of being open-minded and open to others. So, I mean, I love going back home. I mean, Cornwall is definitely my still my calling when I think of places that I miss, and my friends are back there still. So it's great to go back. The humour and the sort of openness, but at the moment it isn't an attractive place to live. In terms of jobs or just at the moment, I think it is pretty
Is it?
tough.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, certainly, I think it's hard. I mean, you can't generalize in a country as diverse as it is, and I'm sure there are many places that are still fantastic or maybe seem to be getting better. But yeah, I think from where we're looking out, it's actually attractive to be
Yeah.
here.
Is there any clusters of businesses or technology or anything that happens through Cornwall, or what's the main sort of driver of employment?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been tourism and tourism, agriculture, fishing, and just agriculture has been the business staple in Cornwall. But I mean, there's a lot of reinvention. I mean, there are a lot of small, sort of innovative companies. One or two or three people companies, biotechs. I mean, a lot of innovation happened about 10 years ago when in my field in sort of pharma and biotechs, there were clusters where people ended up working from home or working in smaller cities. So and there's a and but they never had a university. So Cornwall basically was isolated from sort of the university. People had to go to Exeter or to Bristol, and there was a university at Plymouth, but that was it. So, but now a lot of the what were TAFEs or yeah,
So
tertiary
is
colleges
that the only
became
county in the
became
UK
university.
then, or in the only county in England that doesn't have a tertiary education?
I don't know. I don't know. Could
It
be.
could be, because there's
Yeah,
quite a number of
certainly.
universities spread across England.
Exactly.
That's a great
Yeah.
insight, actually. Never thought about that.
Mm,
The other
yeah.
thing I was going to ask you about is your kids. What attachment do they have to England?
Well, they grew up. I was very keen to get them to speak English and to and have connections with my friends and the children of my friends. But they think of themselves as Swedish for sure. I mean they do have dual nationality, but I mean, and now it's beginning to be cool when their friends are speaking English and they speak fluently. Of course, that's attractive, and they're scoring social marks there. But they see it more. They just see it as another country, really. They don't have a particularly strong pull or attachment. But I mean, we've been there 3 or 4 times a year every year since they've been born. So I mean, they know it well. But we've always headed down south, so they haven't seen much of greater England or Scotland
That's fascinating. Because I would always assume,
yeah,
like my father was from Dublin, which is what was different about me in Northern Ireland. Because where I grew up, most people's both parents was from one side of the river or the other. And my mother then had got this
right.
guy from the big city of Dublin and brought him up to the village. So that obviously gave me a slightly different sort of vantage point on life, just by the fact that he had a bigger worldview himself by coming from a city. So even at that,
Mm,
I'm from Tyrone and I have a loyalty to Tyrone, but I still have a small sense of connection to Ireland. But maybe now, if I have kids and they grow up in Sweden, it'll be like yours. It'll just be that's that's the other place where we go for holidays, and my father comes from, but they don't really have an attachment to it. And I mean, I'm okay with that.
yeah.
If they're their own human
Mm,
being, and you have to allow them to live their life on their terms, really.
mm. Yeah, sure. I mean, you absolutely sort of define global citizen, I think, with all the countries you've been to and places you've been to. But I mean, I have a similar sentiment. I mean, I don't really feel grounded and attached and feel that I'm, a country doesn't define who I am. So and I think that's sort of passed on to my kids too.
Yeah. What type of thing? What do you think is the most important lesson to pass on to kids? In this, or what way has your been approach?
Well, honesty, uh, open-mindedness, fun, humor, and ambition. And I've enjoyed the way I've seen them growing up, and they've got different interests, and they get really involved and really keen, and you think that's what they're going to be doing, and then 6 months later, that's put aside, and they're interested in something else. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know. I mean, I think I mean, both my parents were fantastic, and I got and they were very good role models, and I do try to be that to my children, but I mean, I don't sort of put a lot of effort into think how am I schooling them, how am I teaching them. It's more just letting them grow and
Yeah.
develop, and encourage them with what who they want to
You
be.
told me one time about this wonderful upbringing you had in your garden in your house in Cornwall. You had, what was you? What was
Yes.
it? It was an old converted ancient property, wasn't it?
Yeah, a chapel, yeah. So my father bought an old chapel and converted it into a house. And in Cornwall, there's a lot of sort of ancient burial chambers built on these sacred areas. And so the chapel was built on a pagan
Wow.
worship site, which has an old stone circle as the back garden. So not quite like Stonehenge, but more just a circular wall.
Wow.
And yeah, so it's obviously been a place of some sort of sacred worship for thousands of years. And one year there was a particularly important occasion of the summer solstice, and we had druids in the back garden,
They,
worshipping an
they
ancient
just rocked
tradition.
up. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
And I was 16 and I was doing some gardening in the back, and I uncovered a coit, which is a Cornish or Celtic burial chamber. And typically, when the ruler of a clan died, just actually a bit like the Vikings, where they pile a lot of stones on top of each other as a
yeah,
site. In Cornwall, they put these quoits, which are a huge slab stone. It's probably about 4 meters across as a sort of a circular stone sitting on 3 legs. So I uncovered this and I came in and I said, "My God, you never guess what I've uncovered. I think it's a quoit." And my dad said, "Bury it up again. Don't let people know
wow,
about it," because his worst fear was that it would become, a spot on the
yeah.
tourist site, and we'd just get lots of tourists spotting ancient Celtic sites.
I would have been there. I'd have been the first guy
Yeah,
over. I'd been the first tourist. I
yeah, right.
talking about that actually. When you were talking about that, I thought you were going to say there was a labyrinth. And in my new book, I talk about there's a labyrinth. One of the main character goes to this place in
Mhm.
just as I said, Westeros. It's where there's this old labyrinth and old ancient burial grounds from the Vikings. And I don't know if you've ever been to Annis Hogue, which is it's from the old King Annis from many years ago. And if you haven't been, I will actually literally drive you there myself because I know you will appreciate it. And
Okay, well, I'd
I'll
love to go.
definitely, and I'll
Yeah.
bring your kids too as well, just for the day out that's in it.
Hmm.
It's only an hour away from here,
Perfect.
and
Right.
I know that you started reading my book this week, and
Yes, I have. So thank you for that. And
you,
yeah,
you
I've just
text me to
started.
say it was quite a rough
Yeah.
intro.
Right. Yeah. Arresting. Exactly. So I know the book is about feminism, but the first chapters are sort of focusing on sort of, I don't know, well, the negative side of man. And yeah, I mean, it was pretty intense, sort of rape scenes and true sort of
Yeah. So
base violence.
basically, I'll explain it
But
to you why I did that. So the reason why I shock people into the book is because we know from reading, from the advent of the Kindle, we now know that on average people read 4% of a book and then they never look at it again. So I thought I have to get people at least 10 pages deep, so to sort of get them a bit hooked, and then they can read on. And the best way I could do it was, I thought, I'm going to start off with something which is quite shocking, which grabs their attention and either puts them right into the book or takes them out of the book. And so when I started writing this introduction, it was so difficult because women under, and I market tested it with a lot of women, and women under 30 years old, they didn't see any problem at all with the content, and they just read past it. But women over 30 were like, no, Patrick, I'm done. I'm not reading your book. I'm done. I can't read that and continue. So I have worked so hard on those initial chapters to make it to a extent that women under 30 could see that this is not right, but let's continue, and that women, and I could soften it for women over 30 for them to go, this is not right, but it must lead somewhere. And to just so people can, for people who have read it and don't really understand what it is, that opening chapter was about, it's an analogy for what we're doing to the world. It's like the raping and pillaging of the feminine. And it's the containment of it in a metal cold cage, and we're treating it as an object in which we can use, abuse, and extract from at our will. And whenever we're done with it, we can just discard it. And whenever I hear about all these people talking about, oh, we're off to Mars next, and I'm like, what? We're off to what? I mean, we have a perfectly good planet here if we take care of it, but you're almost saying it's inevitable that we're just going to screw it up and deplete it down to a burning ball of ash. And I'm like, no, we can't do that. We must start to take care of the earth today, because this is our home, and we're using, I think, we're using the resources of 2.5 Earths at the speed we're going, and it's not sustainable. So the book is about the empowerment of the feminine, and it's actually about the elevation of the feminine within all people, which is me and you, men, women, children, everyone, because the masculine is very short-term focused, profit-driven, greed, whereas the feminine is more about holistic, compassion, caring, sharing. And I'm trying to empower the feminine in all people, not just in women, and give people a voice, and also at the same time help protect our beautiful planet as it is. So and hopefully I really appreciate your opinion and your honesty at all times. So that's why I was so excited to get you the book, even though it took us so long to actually catch up and hand it across.
Right, exactly. It's a couple of 6 months.
Is it 6 months?
Right. And how much? Wow. Yeah. And how much of Richard is in you?
Not much, actually, because his life is a lot tougher than mine. He's a bit more, fighting against the world and down, and his mother died when he was younger, so he's had a lot more problems than I've had. But it's easy for me to bring in things like the guy was a backpacker and he went around the world, so it's easy for me to lace that through the book. But this guy goes into the medicine route, and he goes into sort of other things. But of course, I'm going to extract from circumstances that I've been in, and things like that whenever I'm writing a book, because it makes it easier for me to write it that way. And also because I'm not a natural writer, and I'm not a good writer by any stretch of the imagination, it's easier for me to just go, well, I could take this part of, this trip I did through Sweden and make that a part of the book, because I can see it more clearly. So that's what it is. And it was such an enjoyable book to write, because it took me 3 weeks to write it, and I basically just channeled the whole book. And the reason why it took 2 years to come out is because I was sort of market testing the content with people around. They'd read it. I'd send it out to a batch of people for like 2 or 3 months. They would read it and come back with feedback, and I would update it. But basically 90% of what's there was all first batch, just 3 months or 3 weeks during July.
Or 3 weeks. Incredible. That's impressive. I mean, it takes me that long to write a scientific article.
It takes me that long to write a tweet.
10 pages.
So that's what I'm saying. I channeled the whole book nearly. It was
it
It just
just
flowed out of
flowed
me, and
out.
it came
Yeah.
from. It felt like I was
Right.
chosen to sort of deliver this book as a man, because if you look at the
Right.
feedback it gets on social media or on the Goodreads and Amazon and all this, there's actually been a lot of men
Mm.
who have left comments, and it's nearly always got 5 stars. And
Mm.
and I think
Fantastic.
that was the reason why a man like aka me was given the opportunity to deliver this book, because it would make it easier for men to buy and read a book called Forgive Me, Sister. And the
Great.
title is it's actually, and it's again it's forgive us. To it's not me myself, and it's not my exact sister. It's when I say sister, it means the womanhood of the world, and me is like the masculine sort of beast of the world, the machine mind,
Mm.
as it's
Mm.
called. So it's basically like us going like, okay, we're not going to clear off to Mars and destroy and deplete everything that's on this planet. We're going to work with it and do better. So just forgive us for
Mm.
mistakes of the past.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a positive message. I mean, the moment. I mean, we are living through unprecedented times, of course, and I mean, there's so many cliches, but I mean, it does feel like this is a
It
reset at the
does.
moment, doesn't it? I mean, I mean, all of the campaigning for environmental change has almost gone unheeded, and then something like this with COVID-19, and it does actually uh, allow countries just to put things on hold and people to reevaluate and actually stop. That proves that there is. I mean, it can be done. We can make global changes. So I mean, will be a lot of positive things that come out of this as well as negative, of course. So
Yeah, I completely
I
agree.
mean,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. No, but I mean, one of the things that interests me now is, I mean, uh, I mean, both from your perspective and forgive me, sister, and just sort of accepting that we have been taking, the nature for granted and trying to essentially bully human needs on and selfishly just sort of taking what we want. But there is this undercurrent right now, and a very interesting thing that is happening in digital technology with AI and digitalization. And I mean, I believe that we're sort of we're making ourselves vulnerable in a way for AI and digital technology to take control. But events like this give us time to question: is this right, or is this what we really want? So there's a lot of discussion about the singularity, the point at which we won't be able to distinguish between artificial intelligence and humans. And some of the positive work that comes out of, I mean, one of the books that inspired me a lot is *Sapiens* by
Yeah,
Yuval Harari, and he talks in his second and third book about singularity and about the biotech age, and it's almost like Brave New World, where we will have different races of humans and will be artificially enhanced. And in one sense, what we're doing these days, we are setting ourselves up for that. So we are, everything is becoming digital. We're moving to cryptocurrencies. We're moving to, cashless societies. And it's interesting how these global crises helping us get these long steps in advance, both using technology, but at the same time we need to be a little mindful and see and just not rush into every solution as if it's the
yeah.
right one.
I had a conversation recently with some of the upper echelons of decision making within Sweden, and it really
Yeah.
lightened my heart, because they were genuinely saying like Sweden does not need another Spotify or another Minecraft or another Candy Crush or any of these companies which have made billions for the Swedish economy. What we need now is impact unicorns, which is companies which they will make a valuation of billions, but from doing
Mm.
good for the world. And the fact that everyone thought
Right.
that was just a normal next step made me think I really like this society, because
Mm.
they're really focused on the global megatrends which are coming, the solutions which our world is facing. And it's not just
Yeah.
about let's go after something that pays the bills and makes money for shareholders. It's what do we need to do? And if we're going to create AI, is it good AI, or is it AI which will end up leading us to a singularity which may not be beneficial for everyone, but we have, as you say, different races of humans, because these were the rich people and they could get enhanced and artificially modified to make their bodies and brains and whatever else stronger and bigger and better, whereas the poorer people get left behind, and we have like a Hunger Games society where the Capitol has got all the elite, and then everybody outside is basically just doing the mining and the tree cutting and the sort of surf jobs.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, in one sense, I'm not frightened by it. I think it will happen, and we'll be observing. But on the other hand, it's on the border of being sinister. What could happen? So I think having open mind and sort of seeing, the consequences, and being able to predict what the consequence of short-term effects on digital information. I mean, it'll be interesting to see, and I think it's going to happen very quickly. A good friend of mine was saying that he thinks that cryptocurrency will basically be a dominant currency within 5 years. So
I think this virus is another thing that has benefited from this virus, has been cryptocurrency and digitization of currency, because I think all the restaurants I've walked into, and maybe all the shops in the past few weeks, have all says we are a cash-free restaurant, cash-free shop. And I mean, that's sort of normal to us in Sweden, because everything has been digitized already from a card perspective. But I think looking at that from, say, my family, even just coming to visit me in Sweden, they would think that it was bizarre that they can't buy something with cash, and people would turn them away just because they had cash. And of course, the next step from that is a one world currency, which is probably based off what Bitcoin is, but it's a sort of more all encompassing, where all the world banks have come together and did something. But as you say, let me just put this question to you. Think about just 2 years ago, people were talking about Zuckerberg and Musk and all these guys as if they were going to run for president, and these were the saviors of our planet. But one or two scandals in, which just sort of lifted a little bit of took away a little bit of the facade, and no one's looking for Zuckerberg to be their president anymore or to save the world. So people have built these young, smart billionaires up to such an extent that they thought they were going to come in and solve all the problems, but the tide has really turned on that, based on the testimonies in front of the Congress and the Senate, which has happened both in America and the US, where you've had these tech companies and their founders, sort of giving insight into how they run their business and the sort of the apparent legality of some of their actions.
Yes, true. But given that is right, and Zucked was an expose of all the things, the decisions made in Facebook, that basically, growth and money was the most important factors for them, rather than privacy and social benefit. But I think that given the leaders at the moment, the elderly gentlemen who are sort of running the world in their 70s, I would almost opt for a younger generation and say that they should be our leaders. I mean, I think that the 18, 20-year-olds coming out of Silicon Valley probably hadn't actually got the empathy needed to take on, the big or shoulder or burden the society needs. But I think that the time is coming where people in their 30s, 40s are going to be respected as actually being able to have voices for what's needed these days. And the traditional ways of leading countries,
well, we see that already in New Zealand, where I think their prime minister's in her 30s, if I'm correct. I think she's 38, the prime minister there, and she's a very commonsensical and decent human being from all accounts, and some of the sort of legislation and whatever else she's put through in the country has just completely hit the zeitgeist. And again, it lines
Right.
up with my book. That's exactly how I see the world. I believe that for too long we've had a society which has been bent to one side. And there's an analogy in my book, and I hope it comes across properly when you read it. So before I came to Sweden, my plan was to move to China, and I was doing a course called Doing Business in China with Mandarin. So I was learning Mandarin and about Chinese society. And one of the
Right.
analogies that I was given from our teacher was that for you to get things to be in harmony, let's say it's bent to the left, and it's a tree. So to get a tree to stand up, in harmony, facing directly up, you don't just make it stand up straight. You have to bend it over to the right completely. So then when you let go, it springs back to the middle.
Yeah.
And I believe because we've had such a masculine society for so long, it's not so much about we need equality, based on bums on seats. I think to get that equality, we need to bend it across to the other side for a while. So then when it naturally springs back, you get the equality. So you then have an equal number of men, women, and transgender people and all that comes along with that, sitting bums on seats and looking towards a new future. Because just to go, we need 50-50, there's always going to be a pullback on that. And this is why I'm so impressed by this lady who's the Prime Minister of New Zealand, but I'm also really impressed by our mayor in Stockholm. She's, again, I think she's only 40 years old, and the wisdom and sort of the approach that she has to life and to making Stockholm a better city and a world leader is inspirational for me.
Yes. Sure. Second that.
But I could talk to you forever, and usually what happens is when we do start talking, we do talk forever. So, since it's evening, I'll let you go back to your family, and I really want to say I'm honored that you came on, Adam. You're really you're just one of those guys who, whenever people talk to you or meet you, they're left two feelings always. They're left feeling warm, and they're left feeling inspired. You've really got this way of dealing with people that just makes them feel heard and felt and understood. But at the same time, with the stuff that you're doing and the humble way you go about it and the massive impact that you're having on this world in the past, but especially coming into the coming years, it's always a pleasure just to sit down and talk with you. And again, just about what we're chatting about now, just wandering off in different directions and sort of, seeing where it goes. So thank you just for being you.
Well, you flatter me. Thank you very much. I mean, it's lovely to talk to you. And it's just interesting, I think. And, I get a lot out of chats with you. And
we will do. We'll go for that walk
again soon
through the countrysides in the coming weeks for sure.
Fantastic.
All right, Adam. God bless.
Very good. Okay.
Take care, mate.
Love
Thanks for
to talk to
everything.
you.